So this morning, we thought we'll talk about a subject matter which, unfortunately, our community, being the Asian or the BAME community, doesn't always give the preference to. Mental health. Mental health, it was a concern, it was an issue before lockdown. It was a matter probably that we kind of brushed under the carpet and didn't give it the respect it deserved. But then came the pandemic. Then came a whole year of being in lockdown, a whole year of not interacting with people, a whole year of being locked up in our houses, in our living rooms, in our bedrooms, with absolutely or very minimum public interaction. This obviously has a very adverse effect on people's mental health. And this morning, I have two champions of mental health, two individuals, two professionals who work in this field, and we're going to talk a bit with them about mental health, and try and get some advice coming out of lockdown. Because yes, we are all very happy that we have a route out of this, but what are the long-term implications? What is the state of the nation's mental health? So, if I could introduce our guest this morning, firstly we have Zeenat Akbar. Good
Hello.
morning, Zeenat.
Good morning,
And we
Abid
have
Khan.
Mr. Bill Say. Thank you for joining us
Good
this morning,
morning.
sir.
My
So many of you
pleasure.
will know Zeenat. Zeenat, a very active member of the community, always striving to support others, been involved in the mental health space for many years now. Prior to this, she was working in the business networking sphere, and she's always championing causes and working with communities, trying to offer support wherever she can. Mental health is one of her niches, I believe.
That's right, it is. It's
And she's currently she's dealing with a lot of cases. And then we have Bill Say. Now, Bill, your CV is pretty extensive. An Australian trained psychologist with over 20 years experience working with drugs, alcohol, and mental health sectors. You're a
Yeah.
registered NLP practitioner and lecture at the University of Worcester in a variety of degree courses, including criminology, social welfare, and psychology. So this morning's show is going to be fantastic. I'm really, really, really looking forward to it. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
To my viewers, wherever you're watching us from, whichever time zone, whichever medium you're watching us on, please feel free to share this link, and also any questions you may have, please put them into the comment section below. We have two professionals here. I will do my level best to get your questions answered. I'm sharing it on Facebook now. Please do feel free to share it with your contacts and with your colleagues. Any questions, any matters you want to bring up, please feel free to put them into the comment section below. So, Zina, if I could start with yourself, a bit about yourself. I think I think when I first came across you, you were championing women's business. You were running Samosa Saturday, a networking event in the West Midlands, and promoting and helping and supporting female entrepreneurs.
That's right. It was quite a blessed journey, I would say, that Pathways actually identified a lot of female entrepreneurs that would go out and network, but it was just to bring a support because, as everyone can say, that being supported around females is like male empowerment. And we all know females are the best networkers. But with that, I think it was to strengthen the platform for everybody to come share together a network, which started off as 200, but over time it progressed and successfully with other regional directors taking place, the platform just grew. So it took a lot. There was a lot of different skill sets, and there was a lot of passion. And Samosa Saturday, it was I would say a very blessed journey. I would say, yeah.
Fantastic. And then you went off into mental health. So in the current day, sorry, let's talk about before COVID. Before COVID, do you feel, particularly the BAME community, do you feel that the mental health of people was being taken seriously?
think, as many people would say, there's a stigma in BME community for a long time. Mental health has been a voice that needed to be heard. From my experience working with the BAME community, and I'm talking about not only with Seek for Change, it's just generally with the health social care, that I found that the BAME Southern Asian families would find it very difficult to talk about mental health confidently. The reason being is they would say that having a mental health is a taboo subject. My son, daughter can't have it. Let's go to somebody. It's not a condition. It's not an illness. We've got to like differentiate between mental health and mental health illness. So Southern Asian families, what I found over time is that mental health hasn't been looked at, and working within Seek for Change and delivering these programs. And Bill joined us, I think it was 2018, where then we started implementing these workshops about trauma, abuse. We've got to understand, why does mental health happen? Mental health happens through experiences, life events, challenges. So the taboo subject then had to be broken down. I'm not saying it's still, I feel that it still needs to be talked about. It still needs to be emphasized. But it's just a lot of work needs to be put in, and a lot of resource as well that needs to be put into it
Fantastic.
pre-COVID.
And Bill, from your perspective, being a professional trainer and a lecturer in the subject, COVID just changes the whole dynamic of mental health. But before COVID, do you feel that families or individuals were having the right conversations and giving mental health the respect or the seriousness that it actually deserves?
Hard to say, because culturally, I grew up in Australia. I'm Australian. I spent 45 years there, moved here for family reasons. I can see some differentiation between England and Australia in terms of the discussion, but there's still a stigma. And that stigma exists in different communities, in different genders. I think, the stats are pretty clear that the BAME community has less availability of mental health practitioners from that cultural background. So it's harder
Yes.
to access from your community, which is problematic. I think in Australia, sport brings it forward a lot. When a prominent sports person becomes gets depressed, or we've had a recent suicide in a very famous person in Australia, that brings it back in the public consciousness. But it takes something huge to bring people back to talking about it. And I think it's something that we should be talking about at school level with teenagers, to normalise and validate that a lot of people aren't coping, and they're doing it silently, which isolates them. And that isolation is probably the biggest the single variable that creates a really poor outlook is somebody who is hiding their mental health or their difficulties from others and pretending it's not there and putting on the brave face. That's devastating for a lot of folk.
Now,
so
coming from the communities that we come from, like, I'll give you my own example. I had a anxiety attack a couple of years ago, and I'll speak from personal experience. I had an anxiety attack, and I honestly, I thought I was having a heart attack. I thought that was it for me. Afterwards, when I put it on social media, many prominent figures from within my own community messaged me, and they said to me, "Don't put this up because people will write you off."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Hang on." I said, "Well, this does need to be addressed, because if somebody like myself, who's out in the community, who's out, doing various things, if I can suffer this, then how many more people are suffering in silence? Why are we so ashamed?" And to be honest with you, I did take a bit of stick for it, but I'm a bit resilient, and I enjoyed the challenge, and I actually spoke up about it. It astonishes me the attitude of individuals and certain communities in particular when it comes to mental health. Why are we so ashamed to recognize and accept that mental health does exist? That's to both of you, sorry.
Oh, well, I believe it's a lack of understanding. It's a lack of awareness, isn't it? really, more than anything else, because panic attacks are an example of usually people who have panic attacks or depressive episodes are usually strong. They're people who are resilient, who work so hard so long that they haven't had the small breaks because they are so strong. And eventually, every human on earth has a breaking point. There is no one on earth who is resilient all the time. They don't exist. So often the strongest people are the folk who hang on and keep working, and they're so driven that eventually it's the body's way of saying, "Hang on a tick, it's time for a little break," and that can be one of the outcomes. So it's not a weakness. I liken it to the way I think about mental health is this. I liken it to physical health. If we had a pain in some part of our body, we might go to the doctors, and the doctors say, the purpose of pain is to let you know that something's wrong. That's the point of pain. There's something wrong. Don't make it worse.
Yes.
When somebody's feeling pain of an emotional level, or they can't stop, they're obsessing about something, so they're in psychological pain. They can't sleep at night. They're crying a lot. They have to hide. They find it really anxiety provoking to be with others when they haven't before. Now that's emotional pain, and that's saying something's wrong. That's all it is. So
there's nothing wrong with that, is there? Because there is a perception, and Zeenat can confirm this, within particularly again our community. Mental health is a no-no anyway, and then within mental health, between the genders, that men in particular are not allowed to be emotional. I was involved in a conference a couple of years ago for where we had a men's retreat for the day, just men only on site, and it was an open platform for them to come and talk about their mental health issues. And I was absolutely blown away by the stories that I heard on that day. I never knew it actually existed until we had these 40 men in the room, and until they opened up their hearts. This was a mixture of people, Asian, whites, blacks, and for me, it was a wake up call that wow, men do suffer this, and men are allowed to feel like this. But do you not feel that, as well as community specific, it's also gender specific, where you're not allowed to, or you're not given the space to, like, for example, now we have COVID. A lot of us have lost loved ones. 120,000 deaths is phenomenal. And I would say, it's safe to say that nearly everybody has been affected directly. They've lost a loved one or somebody in their family. Is mental health, as well as being community specific, is it also gender specific?
I suppose with Samaritan, they say age 45 to 49 is the highest suicide rates. It's not gender specific. When it comes back down
is that for men or for women? Sorry.
For men. So,
wow.
Samaritans, if you look at the author behind it, they've recorded that 45-year-olds to 49. So let's look at men and female. As I said, like I explained about Small Saturday, how women are very emotional, and how women is like they live up to a society's standard, whether it be through family, whether it be through what you explained about your anxiety. They have this bubble where they have to perceive themselves in a certain way, where they have to show that they're a man. They won't open up. They won't talk about their feelings, which over time, like Bill say, everyone has a mental health. It's just like a health. But unfortunately, men won't seek that support because it comes back to stereotypical views about men going into, if they go into support, if they go talk about it, it's going to be seen as a shame, especially in Southern Asian families. I can only speak about it because I know the community, because I am one. Prior to that, it's about how people's cognitive behaviors are, how their emotional well-being is. Men are very resilient to not speak about their problems, which then leads up to panic attacks, anxiety. It's called the stress container, where they have employment stress, when they have family stress. So it builds up, and then addition to that, then it's about the coping mechanism. They won't be able to cope. Women, again, like I said, they're able to express their emotion, they express to feel empathetic, and they'll be able to be a bit more resilient because their emotions are just shared. That's what I witnessed, and that's what I've been supported the community members about that particular topic about gender related.
Okay, so we've had the whole COVID pandemic, and we've had this whole working from home, and apparently it's the new norm. Apparently this is the way the future is going to be. People working on Zoom, people working online, being very isolated, working from their laptops or their PCs from the bedrooms. I have my own view and my own take on this, but I'd be interested to hear, Bill, your take on this. What effect will this have on people's mental health?
Right. I've been running courses for the last year online, sort of emotional resilience courses for all over Worcestershire, for a lot of organisations, warning people, essentially, just preparing people, because we communicate, and about 30 to 40% of our meaning that we make from other people are the words we choose to use. 60 to 70% is the body language, the facial expressions, the tone of voice, the non-verbal stuff, where we sit, the way we look. That's about 70% of our meaning. So we're actually isolating through different mediums of communication. So when we're talking over the telephone, we can pick up on the voice tone, but we're essentially missing out on the connection, that deeper connection that happens between people.
And that's the critical connection, isn't it? I mean, for me, being a people's person, I run networking events, and throughout lockdown, I didn't opt to do it online because I just don't see the value. I just don't see the purpose. I don't see the point. Yes, I'm speaking to somebody, but the whole feel isn't there. When you engage with somebody personally, there's a whole body language. There's a whole, eye to eye contact. There's so many different ways of engaging and speaking that I just feel that online, for me particularly, it just doesn't work.
What I basically, if I can summarize this really quickly, humans, we exist in groups. We're tribal. We belong to each other because as children, we need someone to look after us, because we're the most vulnerable animal on earth at birth. We can't do anything. It takes us so long to become independent. Most animals get independent quite quickly. We don't. So we need someone to look after us. They can't do what they need to do without help for them. So we have to belong to the family unit. It's essential for our survival. So rejection throughout history from that tribe, whatever you call that tribe, whether it be family, community, whatever, rejection from that tribe has forever meant, well, probably you're not going to survive. You're probably going to die. And I don't believe that we've progressed through that. We still exist with that same terror of rejection. And this is why isolation is such a dangerous event. The Minister for Loneliness was appointed 2 years ago.
Do you not also feel that people's productivity, I mean, how important is the office banter? How important is the office banter? And working in an office environment myself, how will it affect people's productivity? And then obviously in the office environment, you have the juniors learning from the seniors, and the seniors learning from the executives, and this whole chain is now broken. If everyone's stuck in front of their screens, the productivity levels, I feel, are absolutely numb. They're not very excited. There's no gossip going on in the office, which sometimes is the reason that people come to work. And all these things are crucial. Do you not feel that that's going to have a massive, massive adverse effect?
Zeenat? I know you got some thoughts.
Basically, I can just say from vulnerable people's aspect of it, where the initial lockdown took place from April, where let's look at older people. They, like Bill says, we have to belong to a society where we work, the human race works on solution base. And if it goes to office banter, like I said, we're connected. We have to have that real person kind of interaction. When the first lockdown took place with older people, just imagine someone telling you, and they're like adults, that you're not going to see your family member for 90 days. It deteriorates health, it deteriorates recovery. We know that when people are isolated, that those older people, that when I used to work through the COVID, that majority of their physical health affected them. And Bill, you could add on to the parasympathetic system, but part of recovery, if your immune system doesn't work and you're feeling isolated, your mental health is not to the standard that it needs to be, you're not seeing your family, your thoughts, your emotion, it impacts on you on a physical long-term effect as well.
Right.
So that's one aspect. But the other aspect with learning disabilities, where also when I used to work for West Midlands Autism last year, what I found over time, where these vulnerable people who were emotion and their mental health deteriorated so bad, Abid, that we've got to understand learning disability don't have the mental capacity because they can't think, act, behave like an ordinary person like you and I and Bill. Their physical health also deteriorated because the fact that they need the family connection, which also impacted their mental health. So we got to look at each individual for their own. Like some people may prefer the office banter, some people do work from home, but it just depends on that situation.
Valid point. Valid point. Valid point. Bill?
If I can, I was just going to say, stress. Okay, let's talk about stress. Stress is simply, it occurs when there is a threat in our environment. And that threat might be financial, relational, might be family breakdown, it might be COVID. That's a threat, wherever the threat lies. We go to our fight-flight system, and that's a continuum from very calm to panic or imminent death experience. And there's all realms of that. Now, if we exist, that's a good thing. That gives us adrenaline, noradrenaline, and cortisol, gives us the capacity to confront any threats, makes us work hard, keeps us focused. It's great stuff. And if I can use an example, it's a bit like, normally, it's like holding, I don't know if you can see me, it's holding a cup in the air. Now, normally, I don't expend the energy on that. But when I'm under threat, I expend a bit of energy dealing with the pressures of the threat, staying in lockdown, putting my mask on, thinking about family. I'm not relaxed.
It's very overwhelming, isn't it?
It's overwhelming, and it turns off the immune system. The immune system does not work in the fight-flight system. And what we're doing is we're letting ourselves become unwell as we're in what's called the sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight-flight. Now, it's not too much. All of us can deal with hardship. We're resilient. So we hold that cup up. That cup might weigh 5 grams. It's nothing. But after an hour, that 5-gram cup can feel like a fridge.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
My shoulder's cramping and I'm pulling ligaments, and I can do permanent damage from holding up a 5-gram cup. So the idea of mental health work is not to say there's anything wrong. It's simply, how have you managed to put the cup down more regularly? And how do we put our cup down? And that means going back to the people we care about more than anything else. Going back to those we care about and truly being honest about whether we're coping or not. Have you got a cramp in your shoulder?
I've just had a comment in, and please do excuse me. I'm looking away. I'm trying to run the Facebook and the Instagram, so I keep on popping in and out. But a very interesting comment actually. If somebody feels that they have mental health, or if a partner of somebody feels that they have mental health, people may be afraid to get diagnosed because it may have an effect on their employment.
Yeah.
Now, mental health isn't as serious as it sounds, or as it's meant to be sounded, and it shouldn't really have an implication on your employment. But do you feel that maybe that's another reason that people are not getting diagnosed, or not coming forward, or not speaking about it? Like, as I say, I mentioned it, and I got absolutely slated. I honestly, I'll never forget. I had prominent people from within my community, business leaders, message me and tell me, well, our opinion is maybe you shouldn't talk about this because people will write you off.
And they haven't. They
No,
may
they
have it,
haven't.
but it takes a brave person to acknowledge when I need a little bit of help. And what we found, the stats on men and women are very interesting. Women experience more rates of depression than men do, according to the statistics. But men complete suicides more because men use different means, because men don't go
Wow.
and talk. Women do go and talk. So the rate of suicide amongst men is much higher than women, but the rate of depression in women is actually higher than men. But they will share that. And it goes back to that sharing. So to answer that, I think there is a stigma, and there needs to be an acceptance that we can seek help that is private. We can go and seek just opening up to somebody you trust within the community. You know, it doesn't have to be, it may be somebody who's a professional, you know, a psychologist, but there's a lot of counselors out there, and that's very private. That doesn't go on record. But seeking to discuss something, seeking
But
to
I think Zena will concur on this that the treatment is the second or third stage. The first stage is actually identifying and recognizing. So Zena, if for example you have a family member or a spouse or a sibling or even a parent who you feel needs attention and they're not, they are refusing to listen to it, they are refusing to accept it or acknowledge it, what can you do?
Well, I suppose it comes back to what Bill says, the stigma. There is treatment out there, but the question is understanding it first, whether you have got a concern. Mental health refers to like different types of stresses, the containers. It depends how it could be from mild to moderate. Some people that might have depression, mild depression, they can talk. It's proven that talking therapy does help, where you go out to community groups,
But yeah, but if you
where you
have, for example, now if you have a sibling or a parent, elderly
can.
parents who you can now see are maybe suffering from a condition, you engage with them and you have that conversation, and as you know, they're not going to hear none of it. They will put it down to spiritual issues. They will put it down to a whole array of other issues, but they won't actually accept the fact that they have maybe a mental health issue. How can people treat that or deal with that when the patient is refusing to understand or accept?
But like I said, over time, where someone has, someone said there was a family member in the community, I'm talking about 1 year ago, where the family were refusing to accept. They've said, and they said it was a jinn. So it's like a ghostly kind of thing that, so the Asian family say that it's a ghostly jinn. So there was a jinn in this person. He's not got mental health. But over time, what they didn't realize is, like I said, the lack of knowledge and awareness in trying to explain to the family that he needs that treatment. Because if you don't, he can go from being a mild depressive, kind of symptom to a moderate disorder without the right medication, without the right treatment support from either Crisis or Birmingham Healthy Minds. He needs to have that support. Unfortunately, Southern Asian families will refuse it. You can't do anything. Barrier. It's a barrier over time, with awareness, with knowledge
But don't
over
you
in the
feel that
community.
maybe that's the problem where siblings or family members can't go and I dare to use the word report, but try and seek help on this individual's behalf.
But it's like I said, some people that refer to the behavior of mental health. What is mental health? Mental health is about the cognitive behavioral that can affect the person's relationship. They may not trust people. They may not be able to disclose that the fact that they're suffering over time. That sibling, that grandparent, that they're not going to listen, to be fair with you. But with time, you need the right type of support, the right type of information, because with people, you can't diagnose straight away that you've got psychotic behavior, or but you look at their behaviors, you record it, you try and reassure that family member that you need to seek the support. But if a family is adamant that it's a jinn, you can't get involved. You have to just keep giving information, sharing it. But if people want to listen, especially with mental health, some families that I have supported, they've said that, Zeenat, I need that support. Can you please tell us what's happening to my wife? I've given them Samaritan number. That didn't work. I gave them the crisis number, because remember, I'm not the specialist to diagnose, but however, wherever it comes to experience with knowledge and information sharing, it's always good if the family is willing to listen to. There's two types, to be fair. Some won't listen, some will. And the ones will, that's where it goes back to your question. Just provide that information to them.
It takes a very strong level of trust. And so patience, and it's a waiting. And if you can get one member of the family on side that to trust. And it's a long game sometimes, because we can't make, if somebody's in denial or they have a different perception, it's a very hard, we can't ask people to think differently. What we can do is help them feel safe. I think that's as much as we can do.
But I mean, it's like the whole vaccination debate at the moment, isn't it? There's people who are anti-vax. There are people who want to take the vaccine. There's people who are actually sitting on the fence. And I was part of a panel yesterday at a GP surgery trying to advise the BEN community to take the vaccine, and they were presenting questions to us, and the questions that came across were like, wow, really simple questions, which you would think common sense prevails. But however, people have this fear. And I think it's the same for mental health. They're scared to bring those words out of their mouth in case they get tarnished from within the community. And the BAME communities, we're a very tribal sort of community. We have extended families, and we don't want this sort of stuff to come out. We'd rather admit to having an illness such as cancer or stroke or diabetes than actually regard mental health as a condition, as an illness, because there's a whole array of negativity and taboo associated with that. And then that may be also passed down to the offspring of that individual to say, well, your parents are mental, probably you're mental as well. And Zeenat again will, can confirm this. I mean, the whole mentality of certain communities with regard to this matter can be pretty dramatic.
I think, over time, cultural clashes and social challenges, we are, like you said, we belong in a tribe where we have our own set of rules and boundaries of how we speak about anything to mental health, to drug addiction, because it's seen over time where, if we do, it's about the respect and honor that we have within our Southern Asian, or if
I've just had a GP comment, Dr. Rahul. He says, great topic. What I feel is really important to explain to people experiencing mental health problems and their families is that it is just like any other medical problem. Exactly what I just said. There is an underlying imbalance of chemicals, hormones, which is causing the mood disturbance. Therefore, just like with any other medical problems, there is no harm or shame in using medication temporarily to help restore the balance, along with other things such as counseling. And I think it's very important that people understand this and appreciate this, that mental health is actually a medical condition, just like any other illness.
I think going back to what... Sorry, Bill. Do you want to speak?
Yeah. I don't know who's going first, because we're not in the same room. This is the problem.
Yeah.
So you go.
Yes.
Okay. So what I'm saying is, it's again, it comes back to education, Abid. Dr. Rahul's right that it's easy saying it than doing it. Saying something and doing something is two different things. Sometimes you do need, like I said, therapy. You don't always need medication, like sertraline or sertraline. Sometimes, like I said, it depends on the diagnosis of that time. I'm not a doctor to say where from mild to moderate where you should get it, but I suppose my my experience would be it depends how of an impact that mental health is. If it impacts the person's emotion, the thoughts, if they're having suicide ideation, hallucination, then it should be the responsibility of that parent to go seek that support. Whereas you get some people with depression, stress, that they can just go and speak to a counselor, and over time checking in with a therapist, that's all you need, is someone to talk to 45 minutes. But it just depends which level of mental health and how it affects
Yeah,
themselves and others.
but Zina, how many times have we heard, they do it in films, we hear it in the community, that when you say that, mate, you need counseling, people get really offended about it.
Lots of times, because
Yes,
people
I
don't
like it's
understand.
very easy to say that people need to check in with a counselor, but how offensive is that within our communities? Sometimes it's used as a swear word. You need counseling, right? It's said in a derogative manner, and it's received in a derogative manner, which puts a whole negative connotation on the whole mental health thing. Like, if someone's got cancer, then it's a very sympathetic conversation. If someone's got any other illness, it's a very sympathetic conversation. But when someone has mental health issues, it's a very confrontational conversation from both parties.
But I
Bill?
suppose, like I said,
there's a lot of topics and threads going on. It's a very hard thing to be told, so we have to ask, and it is about pain. How are you going? How are you coping? What's going on for you? Rather than you need counselling, it's, are you in pain? What's happening? Are you how's your sleeping? How's your eating? How's your, getting to know somebody and trust somebody, that so that they can open up and say, look, actually, life's not good at the moment. I'm having suicidal thoughts. So we need to have a very trusting relationship. I'm not going to tell that to just anybody. That's got to be somebody I
Yes.
deeply trust who's not going to reject me. Most of us are scared of rejection. That's the deal. So it is tough. I was a senior psych in a maximum security prison for a long time. And I went, these are tough guys. These are hard guys that didn't want to admit their pain. Tell you what, you admit pain in a maximum security prison, you get hurt.
It's all over. Yeah.
Absolutely. I had to run groups with these guys, and I had to talk them and get them through. And after a while, it took a long time, but then they started to trust. And then they started to come clean. But it's a slow game sometimes. With the medication, I think it's important to recognise that medication does not change us, okay? Depression is a lack of serotonin. We don't get enough serotonin and dopamine. Now, all that means is they're natural. And as the doctor said, as the GP said, this is a chemical imbalance. Or if you take an antidepressant, for instance, or something like that, think about this. If you think the same thought all the time, it's like driving around a dirt track. Eventually, you're driving ruts. And then you want to get off that dirt track, but you can't. You're stuck. Does that make sense? So all the medication does is like grade that road. And then you talk to people, and then you've got back in control of your life. And then you can drive off and take another direction. And that leads you out of depression. So that's an analogy, I know, but medication doesn't change us. It just gives us an opportunity to think about our own solutions, gives us back some independence. And it's not, as the doctor said, it's not necessary for a long time, but sometimes we may need that. And it's up to the family to gently coax and encourage and listen and help somebody feel
throughout the whole lockdown, obviously the government done their level best to allow exercising as much as they could. And I don't want to make this political, and it's going to be, it gets very controversial. As well as exercise, what other things could people have done, or what other things have they done to keep their mental health intact and sane?
Exercise is probably one of the most important things. It burns cortisol. Cortisol is the stress hormone that keeps us in our fight-flight, which keeps us unwell. So exercise burns cortisol, and I defy anybody to do some exercise and not feel calmer afterwards. Exercise. Sleep is essential. We heal during stage 4 sleep, deep sleep. The other things that work are acceptance of emotions and tears, believe it or not. Every now and then, if anyone needs a good cry, the stuff in tears is called cortisol. And cortisol is the stress hormone. So we can cry that stuff out. The worst emotion is one that we deny. Yeah, emotions shouldn't be denied. They're accepted. Don't wait till they turn into violence or panic. Let them out. Yeah. So watch a good film that makes you cry. Distractions, getting involved in cognitive focus. So hobbies, gardening, doing things that keep you occupied intellectually and cognitively. Keep your thoughts focused. And setting tasks for yourself that you can achieve. Getting back into control. So not thinking about all the stuff that's outside of our control, but moving back into that which is within our control and practicing those things. That works enormously. That cuts our stress levels enormously, because at the start of lockdown, everybody was focused on the virus, and everybody's anxiety went through the roof. Yeah, and they were stressed. And they weren't looking after themselves. They were watching the news all the time. And after a time, I bet everybody started to turn away from that and say, I can't watch that all the time. I need to get back to business, back to what I do, and focus on what I can control. That's a really important aspect of, resilience, of emotional resilience. And not being afraid to, and talking to others. These are all essential. Making sure that you are not on your own. And remember, isolation doesn't mean no people around you. It means you're hiding something, or there's something about you that you feel if you expressed it to someone else, they'd reject you. So if you're carrying a secret, you're sort of isolated. And when you're isolated, that's a threat. So you need to have one
Amber's
person.
just commented, it's such an important topic. We need to make people feel that they can reach out. And it's as both of you have said, that having that trusted relationship with somebody who you can completely be bare to and completely, and in the fullest of confidence, is speak to them and just let it all out. And I think the message to the viewers today from both of you would be that find that one person, find that buddy as such, and that should be a starting point, and then the rest just kind of falls into place.
And everybody, I know it's so important to just ask if you've got mates, you've got friends, you've got family who you think, gee, they're a little different. Just ask them how they were, because they won't tell you unless you ask them.
Yeah, it's funny you just say that. Dr. Rahul has just said it is essential that people put themselves in the right environment. If that means changing your friends and the company you keep, then so be it. And I think Zeenat works in that sphere, and Zeenat deals with this kind of stuff all the time. How important is it to have the right vibrance around you and the right mindset around you?
I think it's very important. It's like we say, the 5 people you hang out with, the 6th person you become. And I'm talking from the health and social aspect that support workers, care workers play a very important role in people's treatment and in their needs. And I suppose it all comes back down to listening, building that rapport, understanding that that person is safe for you. Knowing the boundaries yourself, because it's like you say, some people find it difficult to talk about their mental health. Give that person time, understand that they are different. They're not any less than you, and just try and build that rapport. And when they are ready to say that I do need help, I'm crying for help, just embrace that and just make sure that you got that right information and support available to them.
Okay, so coming out of lockdown now, and we've got the roadmap. Bill, where do you see the mental health of the nation? What do you see happening?
I think there's going to be a lot of people very confused, and there's going to be a lot of anxiety. And even in the last week online, I've seen a lot of people's anxiety come up again. They're nervous. They don't know what to expect. They're anxious for a range of different reasons. There's going to be people who are so exhausted that they feel like they might feel like they're depressed. They'll need a holiday. They'll isolate. They won't celebrate. They'll be like, I'm exhausted after that 12 months, because that level of energy, when it finishes, that's when people tend to fall apart. Yeah.
Yes.
It's like at war. You know, people don't get traumatized at war. They get traumatized when they go home, when they get safe again. Does that make sense? Because when you're in
Yes,
it,
absolutely, absolutely.
yeah.
Because
So
your energy levels are so high, and at that moment you're caught up in the whole piece that's going on. That when it all goes away, and your body gets time to actually recognize what's just happened and what you've just been through,
yeah,
the calm down of that can be detrimental as well, can't it?
absolutely.
Yes.
Like I was involved in, I used to do some life-saving work, you know, surf life-saving in Australia and stuff, helping people. I was fine during it, no worries. Afterwards, you know the shaking that happens after a car accident or something, when you start shaking, that's called the parasympathetic rebound. And that's when people can think, oh no, I'm going crazy because I'm a bit jumpy. I just want to know to lots of people.
Yes.
Don't worry. That is a normal response by a normal person to being under pressure for a long period of time. And I think this message needs to go out. That people aren't going nuts. We're all okay, but we're going to feel a bit overwhelmed when we start come
What
out
would
of
you
lockdown.
recommend? I mean, the thing is now we've had what, 3 lockdowns, 4 lockdowns, and the whole emotional thing about going into lockdown first and then being let out, then being pushed back in, then being let out. And I personally, for me, this last lockdown, this has been the worst because we were back playing football again, we were back in the gyms, and life was not normal because we were having events, but however, there was some sort of normality because we were still doing our recreational activities. And then suddenly, bang, closed. And I think it's very hard to accept this lockdown for me personally. I think the deaths came a lot closer to home.
Yeah.
A lot more people from a closer community passed away. Whereas in the first lockdown, there was an element of fear and the streets were empty. So I think we were ready for deaths mentally. But with the third lockdown, where there was a lot of people out on the roads, and suddenly everything got closed, yet there were still people out and about, and the deaths got really, really close to home. And I think this last lockdown has been absolutely horrendous in terms of mental health. How should we prepare to come out of this? There will always be an anxiety and a fear that there may be another lockdown after this. Maybe we've lost trust in the government. Maybe we've lost trust in just life, and maybe we've lost faith. But how should people? I mean, we need to start preparing now because we're not. It's the roadmap's been given. What should they be doing now to prepare for that?
Talking to each other. Don't hide from the fact and take your time. Don't go out. Don't go out into the community if you're anxious too quickly. Take your time and
Yes,
reconnect at your pace and never compare yourself to another. It's very important because everyone will be affected differently. So and be prepared to feel. The word is cognitive dissonance, but essentially we're going to feel confused. Some of us will feel quite overwhelmed, quite
yes,
dissociated. Don't feel quite like we're living in reality. It's going to feel a bit unreal for a period. That's normal.
yes,
Be prepared for that. And the way we prepare for that is just remind each other, hey, we don't have to get back on this straight away, but it
yes.
will happen. You know, it'll happen. Don't worry. It's the most natural reaction of any human being. Is the transition from high stress to low stress is actually quite a difficult one. Look
It
after
is.
each
It
other.
is.
Look after each other.
Fantastic. And
So
Zena, anything from you?
yeah,
Yeah, I would say, changes and challenges happen regardless. And it's like a quantum leaps. Do it slowly. See what works out best for you. I found that to do a bit of well-being check-in, do it with the right trusted people. Some people might not be able to go out and go back to normality, like because we're used to structure, routine, getting up to school. Try and do it in little bit. Give yourself that self love, self care. Go out in nature because I'm a big believer. Blue and green. Compare yourself like be around surrounding that's going to give you calm. And in the long term, if you feel the fact that you're able to control your emotions, and again, just go seek medical advice and get that support, because like I said, it's never too late to seek that support, because sometimes people leave it too late and it becomes a mental health that can affect them in the long term.
Fantastic. Bill and Zeenat, thank you very much for taking your time out this morning. I shall be putting your contact details when we share the video, so if people do want to get in touch with yourselves, they can. But thank you very much for your time this morning, and stay safe. And hopefully people will take a lot away from this message today. It's mental health is a bit of a tricky issue, but we must understand and we must realize there's no shame in this. It should be treated as a illness, as a condition, rather than an embarrassment. So thank you very much for joining us this morning, viewers. We hope you've taken something away from the show. Look forward to seeing you same time, same place next week. Please do keep tuned in throughout the week. We have various shows, sports shows, talk shows, political shows, and the news. And if anybody would like to come on as a guest, please do contact myself or contact the studios. We'd love to get you onto the show. We're looking for inspirational leaders, inspirational business leaders from within the community who can come on and share some knowledge, share some experience, share some expertise. So until next week, see you same time, same place. Signing out.